Hi again, everybody. Welcome to an all-new edition of No Holding Back. This is our 50th episode, and I'm pleased to be joined by a longtime friend and coworker of mine on the left, Warren Pick, who's joining us from Marina Del Rey, California. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Benny. How are you, buddy? Good
man.
to see you. Good to talk to you.
You too, man. So you got a little quarantine growth going on? What's the deal there? Let's start right there.
You know, it's my COVID-19 beard. I'm kind of enjoying it. I always flirted with a little growth, but I said, you know what? I'm just going to let this one go. So here it is.
How's the wife liking that?
She thinks I look like Mandy Patinkin, and she's a big fan of Mandy Patinkin. You know, I'm right out of Homeland, so it's all good. It is all good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, so what we normally do on these is, for those that might be watching for the first time, is we kind of go from point A to point B throughout one's life, throughout their career. I'm going to start, Warren, where you and I first met. I believe it was 2012. We were doing the Atlantic 10 Women's Lacrosse Tournament at UMass. I think that's the first time we ever met. And for whatever reason, there was an instant connection. I was attracted to you in the sense that you were such a pro. You were a great guy. You've been at this a long time. Do you remember anything from the first time we worked together?
You know, I think, Ben, that the one thing that I'm sure everybody that works with you and comes into contact with you will know instantly, just your enthusiasm. You know, you're a true sports fan. You're always enthusiastic. You want to get in the weeds on everything. You do your homework. You come prepared. And that way, anything that comes up during the telecast, you're always ready to handle. And you're just a, energetic and enthusiastic guy. And from my perspective, whether I'm producing, directing, whatever, that's all you want. You want somebody who you can collaborate with. And because of the homework you do, the preparation you do, and your general attitude, positive, enthusiastic guy, that makes all the difference in the world. You know, you're never complaining, never whining. Just want to get the best show you can done, and everybody goes in that direction. And look, as a play-by-play guy, you're kind of the leader. Yes, the producers and directors kind of guide you, and EPs, et cetera. But we have to always match your voice and make sure that what we're doing in the truck is in sync with the booth. And you're terrific at that. You point things out, and you help us along the way, and it's always a collaborative effort. So from the first time I met you and we shook hands, looked each other in the eye, I said, there's going to be a great thing. And the friendship we've developed is terrific and very valued in my life, so to be sure.
Well, the check's in the mail. I'm kidding, of course, but I feel the same way. And, same for you in the sense of your preparation and just your professionalism and, your ability to have fun with it. Those are some things that drew me. So before we dive in a little bit further to your career in the business, how many years have you been in the business before I hit you with the next question?
Well, let's see. I started working in this industry in my early 20s. My first full-time job was I graduated from Ithaca College on Saturday, moved on Sunday, and directed the 6 and 11 News at a CBS affiliate in the Lancaster-Lebanon market, WLYH-TV. I had to time out to Cronkite. That'll tell you how long I am on the 6 o'clock, how old I am on the 6 o'clock news. But God, I guess it's been about 42 years, Ben. And still having fun. My son asked me recently, Dad, how long are you going to do this? And I said, well, as long as I can still walk up the steps of the truck and the phone keeps ringing, I'm in.
That's the motto, man. I'm right there with you. I don't have 42, but I'm excuse me, I'm about 26, so I get it. So one other cool thing about you and I and our connection. So I'm sure you remember the night. So Warren was directing. Warren did Army football with the group I've been with for 5 years? You did it with us?
5, I think that's right.
Yeah. So you worked with Tom Bradley, with Kevin O'Connell, and with Feely, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Those were 3 of the analysts I've worked with up there. So
we were doing a game. Holden Academy.
Yeah, right. Maybe in my later life, I'll be like School of Rock. I'll open a broadcast school. But so we were doing that game at Yankee Stadium. And we did UConn Army. That was before, Monken got everything going in the right direction. The last season was not great, but the previous 3 were incredible. Some of the best Armies ever had. So we're doing a game at Yankee Stadium, and we'll get into this as we move along in your story. Warren grew up in New York, so he had a lot of ties. He knew where a lot of the cool sites were. And we got in a car, and we're driving around, and you had just shown me where John Lennon was murdered at.
That's right, the
And
Dakota.
yes, and so we got up to Columbus. I want to say we were by the Kennedy Center. Is that in that area?
Lincoln Center. Yep.
Lincoln Center, yeah.
Yep.
So your phone rings, you get a call to do arm wrestling, and a week or two later, I'm doing the show with you, and we've been doing it ever since. So that's another
right.
cool connection that we've had. So
That's
with
right.
that said, so take me back to growing up in New York, and what are some memories for you growing up in that great city?
Sure. So I was born in New York Hospital. My mother was actually a radio actress in the heyday of radio soap operas. Had some bit of fame in her career. She did really well. She was on all the big shows. And my dad was an entertainment attorney. He represented actors and directors and producers in radio, stage, film, etc. My mom had actually trained to be a French teacher. I was born a little bit later in their life. When I was born at New York Hospital, we lived on 55th between 6th and 7th, right in the heart of Midtown Manhattan. Great area to grow up in. I went to a nursery school on Fifth Avenue, Temple Emmanuel, and then I went to PS 69, which was on 54th between 6th and 7th. It was torn down when I was in 4th grade to build the Ziegfeld Theater. I know some of your listeners and viewers would remember that in New York, which has recently been torn down again. But I went there, and then I went to a couple of private schools in New York City. Eventually, my dad passed away, unfortunately, when I was 12. My mom and I moved to suburban New Jersey. Went to Bloomfield High School. That's Big Ten, Group 4 for all you high school fans. Played a lot of sports, and my wrestling coach said that we all had to do something else aside from just play sports. So I got on the audiovisual team mainly because I thought it was a good way to see all the pretty girls in different classrooms. We used to deliver the film projectors and the overhead projectors. So I got to play with some of the technical tools. When it came time to figure out what I wanted to do for college, my mother had remarried, and my stepbrother was an associate director at 60 Minutes. And he invited me in once during my junior year. I went in and observed 60 Minutes. And I remember on the decamp bus going back to Bloomfield, New Jersey from Port Authority, Manhattan, I said, oh, that looked pretty cool. Maybe I could do that. I kind of always thought in the back of my head I would go to law school someday and be an attorney as my father was. But I applied to a couple of schools. I applied to Ithaca College, and I don't know if you've ever been up to Ithaca in the Finger Lakes.
No.
It's a beautiful, beautiful location. And I met some of the people in the department at Ithaca, and I was kind of sold. So fortunately, they let me in, and I was very involved in the television station. I did a little wrestling my first year of college rather, but decided that my place was in the studio, not in the gym. So spent a lot of time in the TV studio. I learned how to direct, and fortunately I did couple internships. I did one at WBNG TV in Binghamton, and they let me direct some of their news shows, and they were going to hire me as a director when I graduated. Unfortunately, they had some challenges in their department. They sent me down to another station owned by Gateway Communications at the time, this little television station in Pennsylvania. Went down there for an interview. Quick story there. When I went in, I was a 22-year-old kid with water dripping out from behind my ears. The general manager interviewed me, and he said, I think everything sounds good, because he had heard that I was directing some of the news shows at BNG. And I said, well, listen, we'll get back to you soon. But I think this is going to work out. I was walking out the door, Ben, and he said, hey, hold on one second. This guy was a real big guy. And he said, you're kind of a little fella. Come on into our control room for a second. So it was something called an audio follows video switcher. So when I pushed a certain camera, there were robotic cameras. When I pushed the camera button on the switcher, the anchor's mic would turn on. And I had to hit a cart. We had cart machines then to play the audio theme for the newscast. So he had me put my finger on the take button on the switcher and reach all the way over to my other hand where I had to hit the cart. Then if my arms were an inch shorter, my wingspan was an inch shorter, I would not have gotten the job, because he said, I'm not going to redesign this control room for you. I'll just get a bigger guy. Right. So fortunately, I passed that test. And as I said, I graduated Saturday, moved on Sunday, directed the 611 News on Monday. I was there for about 8 months, and then came back into the New York, New Jersey market. So that's
Awesome.
how I kind of got my start.
That's awesome. So I don't know if we probably talked about it, but we talk about a lot of things when we're together, and I didn't realize that you thought about being an attorney. So what ultimately steered you away from that? Was it just what you said, or was there more to it?
I was making money in the television business,
Okay.
and I didn't really want to spend the money on law school.
Okay.
So, and it's funny as it turns out. You go through life, and you always kind of look back and say, woulda, shoulda, coulda. Most of my
Yep.
friends that are attorneys don't like what they do for a living. I'm very fortunate. You and I have talked about this a lot. I feel very blessed and very fortunate. I really do enjoy what I do. I've had opportunities to travel all over the world, meet terrific people like yourself, and work with great people and become friends and develop strong relationships. So, no regrets at all. Law school would have been interesting. I did go back to Columbia University School of Business, got what they called fundamentals in management. It was kind of like a mini MBA, which
Oh,
was very valuable in developing my own company and my business and kind of keep track of things. So that was good as a form of higher education, but it didn't keep me out of the control room of the truck for very long. So that was also a true benefit.
right on. All right. So Ithaca, the only thing I know about Ithaca is the Seinfeld episode, and we're both Seinfeld guys when he went to Ithaca and he got kicked off the plane. You go
That's
to
right.
Ithaca, you go to Binghamton. So where did the career, where did the broadcast field take you from there, man?
So after I was at this little TV station for several months. At the time, I had a girlfriend in New York. I was going back every weekend, and it was a great learning experience to be there for several months. But I knew I wanted to move into a slightly bigger market. I had actually answered an ad in Broadcasting Magazine for a job as a producer director with New Jersey Public Television,
Hmm.
and I was fortunate enough to get that position. I moved back to New Jersey found an apartment in Bloomfield, actually, where I'd gone to high school,
Right.
right behind Bloomfield College, and worked in the Newark station. I directed the New Jersey Nightly News. I was the director in the Newark studio. They had a studio in Trenton. It's kind of a two-studio operation. So there's a studio in Trenton,
Right.
and I was there in Newark, and we did a lot of public affairs, a lot of entertainment, performances, music, dance, cultural type of things. And there was a guy there who did some of their sports stuff, a guy named Frank Belmont. Um, he and I kind of got together and I started working on some of their sports productions. And then in 1980, I'll date myself. In 1980, I was hired. I was hired to go to work at Lake Placid for the Winter Olympics,
Yeah.
and that was just turned out to be a fantastic experience.
Right
I
over my
still have.
both shoulders.
That's right. Yeah.
I
So that
wanted
was
to get
great.
to that, man. I wanted to get to
Yeah,
that because that was what I mean. Again, we've been friends for a number of years, and
yep.
I think one of the coolest things that you've done a lot of awesome things, Warren, over the years, and I'm hoping
Thank you.
everything stands pat, and you and I can get back together in August with our group from the WAL and continue to do the arm wrestling shows. We both have a strong respect and passion for that. For me, it's because of the work and the commitment and the family-like attitude that all those competitors and everyone involved with the WAL have. But in terms of that story about 80, here's what I remember you telling me. I was standing behind Michaels and Dryden when that happened. I mean, that alone,
Yeah,
my love for hockey. It is my favorite
yeah.
sport, bar none. So walk us through that. What happened there at the 80 Olympics? What did you do besides stand behind Michaels and Dryden?
Sure. So, that was a fantastic experience. I was working for ABC, which at the time, was really, as they used to say, recognized around the world as the leader in sports television.
Yeah.
Fantastic opportunity. Rune Arledge was the executive producer. I'll tell you a quick anecdote about that. But I was essentially a runner, as many
Okay.
people who were at ABC started were runners. We stayed in the Thunderbird Motel in Lake Placid there, and I just got to do some great things. Yes, I was behind Al Michaels and Dryden when he said, "Do you believe in
Awesome.
miracles?" And that was kind of a surreal experience, I think, for everybody, because nobody really had expected them to do, that team to do as well as they did, and it was just a surreal experience, a fantastic moment for American sports, and for Mike Eruzione, as Esposito dubbed him, the Milkman, because he
Yeah.
milked one goal into an entire career, which is
Lifetime.
amazing,
Yeah.
lifetime. But
Right. Right.
no, it was fantastic. A couple other things I did there. I got to work with Chris Schenkel,
Nice.
who's just a fantastic guy and so talented and just the warmest, kindest guy. We were doing ski jumping. And the announce position after the competition, we'd go and put the packages together and voice them. And a quick funny story, he got very ill. I think he got the flu. in the middle of the Olympics. And at one point, our producer, a guy named Terry Chastro, asked me to go down and help Chris out. So I went down to the announce booth was in a little hut halfway down the jump. And the only way I could get there wasn't really an elevator. You know, you basically had to walk up and down the jump. So I went down, and Chris was really sick. He was probably running 100, 203 fever. He got through the voiceover, and he looked at me. He said, "I'm not sure I can walk back up. I feel really weak." Well, Chris was a tall, guy from the Midwest, tall, skinny guy. Couldn't have weighed more than, I don't know, maybe 160, 170 pounds. Long story short, I put that gentleman on my back and walked up the stairs and carried him up to the top and got him in the limo. So he was very grateful for that. He wrote me a couple of really sweet letters thanking me for that. Another funny story I had, I was asked one time to go get Eric Holden in his dormitory and bring him into the studio for an interview. So I go to the dorm, park the car outside, walk into the dorm, knock on his door, and I hear this kind of very light, weak voice. "Yes." I said, "Mr. Hayden, it's Warren from ABC. I'm here to pick you up for your interview." He said, "Come in." And I walked in, and Ben, here was this guy, very kind of slight upper body, sitting on the edge of his bed in cutoff sweatpants shorts. I forget the name of the guy. There's the funny motorcycle commercial, but he's half man, half horse. This guy had legs. I mean, his single thigh was probably 3 times the width of my thighs, and I'm a fairly muscular guy, as you know.
Yeah,
he looked like a freak of nature, but just the sweetest, kindest guy you've ever met. And we just talked, and I brought him to the studio, and that was great. It was just one great experience after another. I'll tell you one other story about Rune Arledge. I was on the headset, I believe, at ski jumping, and Rune had this thing called the Rune IFB. Our IFBs that we use all the time, where the producer of the truck can talk to you. So we were testing the IFBs, and all of a sudden I hear, just at a different volume and a different tone, this voice, "Who's on at ski jumping?" And I kind of look around. I go, "This is Warren. I'm a runner." He goes, "Okay, do you hear me clearly?" I said, "Yes, sir. Who's this?" He goes, "Who's this? It's Rune. Who do you think it is?" And it was it was the Rune IFB, and boy, that was a voice and experience I'll never forget. So it was great. It was just a wonderful experience. The first Olympics I've done 8. I've been very fortunate.
Wow.
It's a very unique event, but that was the first one. Then I worked with ABC on and off for the next several months, better part of a year actually. Did all kinds of different events for them, but it was just one of those wonderful experiences that, being in the career that we've chosen, is it's just fond memories and sets you up for some great relationships and great stories.
That's awesome stuff, man. I mean, I do remember you telling me the Eric Hayden story. I don't know if you ever told me the Rune one, so that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, man. We're all about that. There's no time on this, man. I don't have 30 seconds to interview you. You know how it is. So it's nice.
Come on, Benny, we got to get to break. 10 seconds.
In 5, 4. I told Warren when we started, I said, in a weird twist of fate, I'm actually going to count you down because he's in my ear a lot. So anyway,
wow, I don't know how you do it.
I don't either, man. It's just the rush of the adrenaline. You know how it is.
Right.
You have the same things, but probably in a different way with the controlled chaos that you guys deal with in the truck. I want no part of that. So after the Olympics, where did that lead you? Where did that lead you with ABC? What did you do from there?
Sure. So, worked on and off for them, did a bunch of things, did everything from NHRA drag racing at Englishtown, New Jersey, to worked on a couple of U.S. Opens. I did the 1980 U.S. Open at Baltusrol, the one where Jack Nicklaus won at the age of 40, and Aoki chased him down the fairways, and that was fantastic. Then we did the U.S. Open at Marion. Got to work with the famous, hugely talented Chuck Howard, who was the producer. So I did that for, I guess, better part of a couple of years, actually. And then, I wanted to kind of transition from news to sports. So I had an opportunity again at that time. Dolan owned a sports channel on Long Island. So I got connected with those guys. And it was funny. We used to do on Friday, and I got to work with some terrific people. Bill Webb, the late Bill Webb, very, very well-known, famous television director. He kind of took me under his wing and learned so much from him. A guy named Stan Epstein. I don't know if you remember Stan, was director of the Islanders. Jiggs McDonald, of course, Eddie Westfall.
Yeah.
Yep, you know those guys. So I got hooked up with Sports Channel. I don't remember exactly how, but got hooked up with those guys. We would do New Jersey Nets basketball at Piscataway, New Jersey. I guess it was the Rutgers campus. They played in the arena. We'd do a game on Friday night down in Piscataway. Then we'd go up to Columbia University. We'd do a 10 o'clock soccer game on Saturday morning, a 1 o'clock football game. Then I'd go out to Long Island. I'd do an Islanders hockey game Saturday night. And then I'd go back to New Jersey on Sunday for another Nets game. So it was great, man. I was freelance. I was getting a fee for every game. And I was just,
Yeah.
a busy guy and as happy as could be. Worked there for a couple of years doing that. It was just tremendous experience. Again, I kind of went from being an AD to a producer, did some directing. And then Pete Silverman, who I had met through hockey. He was with the Philadelphia Flyers organization. He had gotten the job as the executive producer at Madison Square Garden Network. So him and a guy you might remember, Herb Kaplan, were both over there at the Garden. And they called me up one day and said, "Hey, we got a job for you at Madison Square Garden if you're interested." It was a Directors Guild position, so I got in the DGA as an AD. And Leon Schweier, who I guess now is with NFL Network, was there, and Bobby Lewis, and Mike McCarthy was an intern who eventually became president of MSG Network, and
Wow.
Howie Singer. A lot of good guys
Yeah.
were there, and it was a fantastic, such an interesting place to work. We did events just about every day between Rangers hockey, Knicks basketball, Golden Gloves boxing, pro boxing, wrestling, track and field, tennis. It was just constant shows every night. And it was great. I was there on staff from 82 to 89. I had been hired as an AD. I was made a producer in about 2 weeks because they needed help. And then I got to direct a lot as well. And traveled with one of the great parts of that was I traveled a lot with the New York Rangers. And that was
Right.
when, you'll remember all these guys, Ron Duguay and Ron Greschner and who else was there? The Maloney brothers, Pierre
Yeah.
LaRouche. And I
Wow.
got to tell you that was like traveling with a rock band. I mean, we get to Detroit at 1 o'clock in the morning off the charter, and the fans were lined up around the block for the hotel. It was great, and they were all fun. And that was kind of, I'd done some of that traveling with the teams on the charters with the Islanders. I think I've told you this quick story. Al Arbor, who was the coach of the Islanders, had this
Right.
great thing. He was always the last one on the bus.
Yeah.
And he'd get on, everybody, make sure he'd just look in the back, make sure everybody's seated. He'd sit down and he'd say, "Wheeler, bussy."
Yep.
And the
Yep.
bus driver would go away. But, working at the Garden kind of brought me a little bit back to a story, brought me back to the Olympics. Herb Brooks was the coach for a while. And
Yeah.
Sam Rosen, who's the play-by-play announcer at the Garden, still there
Yep.
for the Rangers. We had several long, very intense dinners with Herb because he was just, kind of a genius of a guy.
Yeah.
But boy, he would, if you wanted to dissect a hockey play with him, it wasn't a 5-minute conversation. It was an hour just on the one play. So again, fascinating experience. As I said, it was there 82 to 89. Got to do every sport that we did there. I directed all the wrestling events for what was then WWF, which
Right.
became WWE.
Yeah.
And that was great, working with Gorilla Monsoon and the Hulk and Andre the
Legends.
Giant and legends, absolute
Yeah.
legends. And that was great. In 1989, I'd gone through some personal things. I'd gotten a divorce. My mom had passed away, unfortunately. And I was kind of at one of those crossroads in life where you say, hey, we may want to mix things up again. So one day I walked into Pete Silverman's office, my executive producer, who had become a good friend as well. And I said, hey, Pete, what would you do if I quit? And he didn't even look up. He was writing a memo or something. He didn't even look up. He said, I don't know. You make too much money. I couldn't replace you. I'd probably just hire you again as a freelancer. And I said, hold on. I went out in the hallway and I kind of did one of those, please God, tell me I'm doing the right thing. And I walked back in. I said, okay, I quit. And he, again, without even looking up, he said, can you direct the Rangers game tomorrow? Which I was scheduled to do. And I said, sure. And he said, okay, how much? And I hadn't even thought about that. To tell you the truth.
Because you've
So I
probably
went
been
back
on
up.
salary, right? Or were you on
Yeah, I was
salary
like,
or still per
yeah,
game?
No, no, no. I was on salary, so I
Yeah.
hadn't even given that any thought.
Right.
You know, it was kind of a rash decision. But I went back in the hallway and had another conversation with the good Lord, the good Lord, and I went back in and I blurted out a number. He said, "Fine, see you tomorrow." So that was kind of the start of my business, and I just kept directing, you know, Rangers hockey, and Vince McMahon said he wanted me to stay there and direct the wrestling events. So did that, and then, you know, a lot of other business opportunities came out of that. So they became my biggest client, and then about a few months later, a guy named Dan Wilhelm, who at the time was president of Prime Network.
Okay.
And Prime Networks was kind of a collection of, I guess it was MSG Network, it was Prime Ticket in LA, et
Right.
cetera, et cetera. I had met Dan because I was the producer for tennis, and I think they also carried the Milrose games, which we had produced. By the way, I'll just brag for a second. The Milrose games, which I produced, won the first Emmy Award, the New York Emmy Award for Madison Square Garden. They've had, you know, hundreds and hundreds since, but that was just a
Bravo,
great
as you would
experience.
say.
Thank you. That was a great
Yeah.
experience to do that.
That's
And
cool.
but anyway, Dan called, and my wife and I were sitting in our apartment up in Riverdale, New York, in our office, our second bedroom. And Dan said, "Listen, I need 86 1-hour shows. We're going to do half of them are going to be done in the winter. They're going to be called Snow Zone, and half will be done in the summer. Those are going to be called X2O Zone. What we're going to do is we're going to take the last segment of a bunch of shows we get. So in the winter, we take a snowmobile show, a ski show, a snowboarding show, whatever winter sport it was, and we just put the last segment together. We'd shoot wraparounds, and we create an anthology, essentially, you know, an hour program, because they could get more value out of the shows that they were buying, and
Yeah.
plus it gave them filler programming. And he said, I need those shows done in a month. Just, you know, we'll give you a nice production fee. I'll send your contract on Monday. Go to work. And I hung up the phone. And I looked at my wife, Linda, and I said, call everybody we know. Because we have to put a team together. And literally, I think that was a Thursday afternoon. By Monday, we had offices in the Meta facility, Moxie Video, a guy named Charlie Leota in New York City. And we put the shows together. And, you know, Ben, that kind of launched the company, Wave, which is Warren's audiovisual endeavors. Not very
Yeah.
original, but it
I don't
works.
know if I ever knew that.
Yeah, Warren's
Yeah, I
audiovisual
love it.
endeavors. I'll tell you how it came up with that. I was trying to figure out what to call the company, and on the West Side Highway, driving down to Manhattan, there used to be this big neon sign that said Ferco, Ferco, kind of written in script. It was a huge
Okay.
sign, and I always wondered what it was. So I looked him up and called him on the phone. The guy answers. He goes, Ferco. I said, hi. I'm just curious. What do you guys, you know, where is a name for your company? Is it a family name? He goes, what do we do? I said, excuse me? He goes, what do we do? And I looked it up. I said, you rent film equipment. He goes, right. Film equipment rental company, Ferco. So I go, oh, okay. So I came up with Wave. I'm not sure where that connection came through, but came up with Wave. And, you know, Ben, I'll tell you, it's been a terrific ride. We've had a wonderful opportunity to do sports all over the world.
Yeah.
For, you know, you name the network, we've done something. It's just been terrific. We're very fortunate again to work in this business where, you know, it kind of went to that freelance world that you and I live in,
Yeah.
where you can work for a variety of different clients and do a bunch of different things, whether it be sports or entertainment or news or, you know, corporate or whatever. We've been able to kind of dabble in with a fairly wide client base and a variety of genres. And, you know, listen, I wake up every day very grateful for the career I've had, and the career, fortunately, even with all this gray and white hair and all the craziness going on in the world today, that I still have. I'm lucky right now. I'm working, so I feel very
Yeah.
fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, love the stories, man, and that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about doing this. It kind of started, you know, but I'll just quickly throw it out there. Maybe somebody's watching for the first time, and you know, my son and I my son's like, Dad, we should do a podcast, and then all this happened. I haven't worked since February, the end of February, and you know, we went from doing it on my phone with Feely. He was one of the first ones we had on, just because Jay and I are friends like you and I are. I mean, we can pick up the phone no matter what's going on in either one of our lives. And, you know, we may not have the answers, but we can certainly shed some advice and, you know, help each other out as friends. And so then we went from there. A week later, we started doing it on Zoom, and here we are. And we've done 50. But love that kind of stuff, Warren. You got an incredible career, obviously, with a lot of things and a lot more to get to. Now, you mentioned you're working. So you have been doing the PBR. How many years have you done that now? 2 or 3 years?
This is my third year. I did it the
year.
first year. First year we did it. I was one of two directors that they brought in
Okay.
to do about half the season. And then fortunately, I was chosen to be the director to continue on the tour.
Right.
And, it's the bull riding is a really fun package to do, Ben. It's I kind of equate it as a combination of sports and entertainment. And
Right.
I've always been very much drawn to those types of productions, just like
Yeah.
the World Arm
Yeah.
Wrestling shows really do,
Yep.
because it's the personalities, and you get into the
Yep.
personalities of the sport. Bull riding is unique. You not only get into the personalities of the cowboys, the
Right.
riders, but you get into the personalities of the bulls. And believe me, they do have personalities.
They got a mind.
And it seems that way,
Yeah. Yeah.
we often talk about the athleticism of the bull, and not only are the Cowboys scored, all you PBR fans would know that, but not only the Cowboys scored, the Bulls are scored as well. So there's a lot at stake for the contractors, the stock contractors that raise these bulls. It's kind of like thoroughbred racing. There's money to be had there. They may earn money based on the success of the bulls. So the bulls are definitely a big part of the story. But no, I'm very fortunate. We've been doing. I just finished the third weekend of a team event that we're doing in Las Vegas
Mhm.
without fans, obviously. The
Yep.
first fanless event that we did was in Duluth. We had Duluth, Georgia.
Georgia. Yeah. Yep.
We had a regular event scheduled, but then kind of COVID hit. They banned the fans, and we did it there. That was interesting to do it in a big arena because PBR packs arenas
Right.
everywhere from Madison Square Garden to the Staples Center in LA
Yeah.
and
Oh,
all
yeah.
across the country.
Yep.
And we did it without fans, and then we were off for a few weeks, and then we did an event. This was a little bit crazy, unique in my career. I drove an RV from Doylestown, Pennsylvania, in Bucks County, where we have a home.
Right.
Drove to I drove to Western Pennsylvania, met up with our play-by-play announcer Craig Hummer in his RV. It's a 30-foot Cruise America RV that the company did rent for us. And then we drove the next day about 10 hours to Missouri, and then drove to Guthrie, Oklahoma, to a place called the Lazy E Ranch, which is a magnificent equestrian facility. They do standard horses, quarter horses, thoroughbred horses. They have a big arena there. So we stayed in our RVs. We did an event in that arena. We did bull riding there for a weekend. We stayed in our RVs during the week. And then we did an event the following weekend. And then I drove back to Pennsylvania in my RV. That was unique. Never saw that one coming. But now in Las Vegas, we're at the South Point. And they basically they have a big equestrian arena there as well. They essentially, we made it into a television studio. So they're LED screens on three sides, big, long, horizontal screens on the two wings. And then above the bull chutes, there's a huge LED screen. And they have a terrific graphics package that they put in there. They run some of our video during the broadcast, but lots of graphics packages introducing the riders and the bulls, etc. Our play-by-play, Craig Hummer, and our color analyst, Justin McBride, two-time world champion. Great guys. They're there right in the arena, kind of in the studio. And then we have a sideline reporter, Kate, who does a terrific job on the interviews. And, it's all social distance. It's very interesting to see how it's done. We're tested when we get there. They check your temperature every day. We have to pretty much stay on the grounds in our rooms, and some limited areas of access, the pool, the gym, etc. They cater our meals right next to our trucks, and they keep everything within what they call functional groups. So my functional group is the people that I work with in the television control room, and that's it. So we live in a unique time with this kind of difficult pandemic that we're all faced with. But again, I feel very fortunate to be working, and we're doing 4 shows a weekend. So this was our third series. We have 4 more next weekend, and then we're off for the week of 4th of July. And then we go to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where there will be fans. Again, socially distanced. They're doing it in groups. You can buy tickets on Ticketmaster, all you people who want to buy some PBR tickets. That was a cheap plug, sorry. But
all right,
it's
your hour, man. You can say whatever you want.
It's interesting how they're doing it. But, listen, this experience has been fascinating. We had a situation this past weekend where it was a new set of Cowboys because they're doing a team concept, which is also very interesting with PBR. Probably the way it'll go in the future, because it gives them all kinds of great marketing opportunities and gives the fans something to root for, not just the individuals, because of course there's still a world champion. But much like in baseball, you have an MVP and you have batting champions, etc. So it's an interesting concept. So they brought two teams in, or teams in for the first 2 weeks, then a new set of teams in. Unfortunately, on Wednesday, 7 of the Cowboys that they brought in tested positive for COVID.
Mm.
So those folks were not allowed to compete. They brought in some new people. But, again, it's fascinating to go through the process, Ben, and see
Yeah.
how this all works. PBR is doing their best to make it work and make it as kind of foolproof, if you will, as possible. But there's no such thing at the end of the day. They're trying their best, but listen, unfortunately people are going to get sick. So I've been
Yeah.
fortunate for my place here in California. I'm able to drive. My wife bought me a Father's Day present and is flying me back next
Really?
weekend. Yeah, because my
Linka.
son's going to. Linka, yeah. So my son's going to be out here as well. My daughter's here with us. So
That's great.
yeah, but it's been great. Again, happy to be working, happy to have a sport on the air, and
Yeah.
we've been doing 3 shows a week for CBS Sports Network, 1 on the broadcast side, all live, by the way, which is also, we've never really done a lot of that at this volume before. So it's been a really interesting experience.
If anybody can get through it and pull it off, it's this guy I'm talking to, man, because he's done just about everything there is in the business. So I was going to ask you the biggest differences, but you've already covered that so eloquently. So let's talk a little bit about a show that you and I are hoping to work here in about 6 weeks. What do you know about how that setup might be as we deal with this, as we're still living in this whole COVID thing? There's no vaccine. The numbers are up all over the country. What can you tell us from the conversations you've had from the fine folks at WAL, and what we may be in store for, and what fans may be in store for when they start watching those? Hopefully things are good to go, as we've got them right now planned tentatively for early August.
Sure, Ben. So I think the plan, again, no fans.
Yeah.
Normally we have a nice sized crowd in our venues. We work in smaller venues so that we get the appropriate amount of people in. A lot of times it's friends and family and fans of the arm wrestling community. So right now I think we're going to limit that. Most of the conversations I've had is, how can we do it with the minimum amount of people in the room? And
Okay.
that seems to be, kind of the protocol everywhere you go,
Mm-hmm.
in across the sports world and the entertainment world and everything else in terms of production. How many people have we seen doing shows on Zoom and out of their homes and everything
Yeah.
else? So I think
Yeah.
the idea is, we're trying to minimize how many cameras do we absolutely need? What's the minimum amount of cameras? How can we separate people in the control room? Maybe we outboard graphics and it's just a couple of people in the control truck. Do we put you and your analyst in a separate room, or are you actually in the same room as the arm wrestlers and the arm wrestling table? I think the biggest group of people would be the competitors and their friends and family. So how do
Right.
you isolate all of those people? Last conversation I had about it, we've got some meetings coming up this week, but we were trying to get the number down to 10 people or less in the room at one time. So figure 2 arm wrestlers,
Yeah.
3 judges. So
Bart.
that's Bart and his team of 2,
Yeah.
right? So that's 5. If you had 4 camera operators, which is kind of our normal scenario, we have 2 hard cameras, 2 handhelds. Now you're up to 9.
Right.
So can you do this event with 9 people in the room? Is it going to look exactly as it has in the past? No,
No.
because we're going to shoot it the opposite way. We usually shoot from the stage. We play a lot of music venues, as you know, so we often shoot from the stage out into the audience. We're more than likely going to flip that around, shoot towards the stage.
All right.
Everybody at this point understands that there's no fan base there, there's no audience there. So again, if we can keep things under the number 10. We feel like that's in compliance with the local ordinances in Chicago. When we get to the championships, we'll see where we are. We played in that big, beautiful studio at Turner, the esports studio there, which is just a terrific venue to work in. So we've been there. We'll see how that all works out. But, for now, I think we're shooting for that number 10. We talked about using some robotic cameras, but again, if we can keep our camera operators down to 4, it's going to be more work for the athletes. They're not probably going to have their little support team there, or if they do, there's an idea to spread them out again. So, look, this thing unfortunately changes the rules and regulations. We're all under change kind of day to day. I'm sure we'll all be wearing masks. I'm not sure about the competitors. I went out and played pickleball this morning. I wasn't wearing a mask, but I've gone on some runs with a mask. It's not the easiest thing to do. So we'll see how that all develops. But look, the bottom line is we've got willing participants. I mean, the social media presence of WL has really been terrific.
Yeah.
The guys are working out hard at home. You see the stuff on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube every day. These guys are working out. They're ready to go. I think like everybody else, they've got a lot of pent up energy. They're ready to compete and get back at the sport they love. Look, these guys aren't like greedy baseball players. Did I say that out loud? I guess I did.
You did. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So these people do it for the love of the sport.
They do.
And love of the competition. And they work so hard. And look, we have, as you well know, we've got a terrific group. I mean, some of these guys, we know Devin and just all these great guys that are larger than life characters and bring the sport to life and let you and I do the jobs that we do because of their personalities. So they're ready to go. We'll figure out how to get it done. Again, I think it'll be a learning experience. The second show is going to be a little bit different than the first, the third different from the second, and we grow and adapt as time goes on. But listen, we have to be innovative, we have to be creative, and find a way to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, man. I just want to work, man. I mean, I'll do whatever we got to do, man. I haven't worked in almost 4 months, and that's –
Well, Benny, I got to interrupt you there. Listen, as when you told me you're doing these podcasts, and your son Luke is just a terrific kid. But when you guys told me that you were starting to do this, you're a broadcaster, and what you're doing now is broadcasting. You are using your talent. You're doing your homework. You're setting up the interviews. You're doing it, and you're getting it done. So that's a credit to you and to your son. But you are a broadcaster, true and true, and you're exercising your craft. So it's not what you usually do. You'll be doing that soon enough. But you're still working. You're working.
I'm trying, man. I mean, I got this set up in the living room, and obviously you can see the stuff behind me. I got this new stand-up desk to avoid sitting, and dealt with some back stuff for a year and a half, as you know, and a lot of us do. But yeah, I wanted to do something to keep fresh, man. And this is actually something that I've always liked doing this. And what I do normally, as you know, and most people know, that I'm not usually spending an hour talking with somebody, and it's recorded. So that's kind of cool. I enjoy that. I kind of miss that from when I was a reporter like yourself. I got roots in local news like you do. And so it's cool to keep those skills fresh. And, and I mean, the stories, just the stuff with you, with the whole 80 thing, and Herb Brooks, your coach, and all this stuff you can go on and on about are cool things. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback on it. So let's talk a little bit about the time we were together along the banks of the Hudson River.
The banks of the Hudson.
For 5 years we were together. How much did it still mean to you that you were a small part, like I've been, of Army football for the years you were, Warren?
Well, Bennett, I'm glad you asked me that. And you and I shared those great memories we had up there, great experiences. I think from the first conversation I had with the guys at CBS Sports Network and CBS Sports about doing it, I think from the moment that I was asked to do it to the last game I did, this is a unique group of young men.
Yeah.
To play Army football. The fact that, just to get into the academy to begin with, you got to be smart. You got to be a great student. You got to be, intellectually way, way, way above average. And with all the arduous academics they have to deal with, let alone the military training, they're also playing football, and they're playing football, at a high level. When you and I started, it was not exactly I guess it was under Coach Allison, not exactly a successful program. And I remember a graphic in our first season. I think they were playing, was it Duke?
Probably.
They're playing, and we had a graphic about the difference in the weight of the linemen.
Oh yeah.
And it was a 1,600-pound difference. But here comes a couple years later, Jeff Monken. You and I use his last name as almost buddy. As a buzzword, Monken, right?
Yeah.
He came in and with the support of the superintendent and the commandant, they changed the program. As I'm sure you've told your viewers, the problem was these guys would be out on maneuvers all summer eating squirrels in the woods, and then they come into camp and have a game 10 days later, and they weighed, linemen were weighing like 200 pounds.
Yeah, and they're beat Monken up and banged up from that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So, Monken came in and really turned that program around. around. He'd had some great training at Navy, as you know, and then other successful programs. And I do remember our very first meeting, when we met with
I'm
the
glad
coaches.
you went there, because I was going to go there next.
Go ahead. You set it up. You set it up. It was great.
Oh, all right. So, excuse me. That's good TV there. So, all right. So I had,
I like it.
yeah. So I had the first analyst I was with was Randy Cross. Second analyst was Tom Bradley. Third analyst was Kevin O'Connell. And I'm now on 5. Ross Tucker last year had Jay Feely for 4 years. So it was Feely and Triffin, John Triffin, who was our sideline reporter. And it was, everyone in New York said, hey, you guys are here at the seminar. I want you to go up, meet with everybody. And I get it. Jay and John were new. You and I'd been around a little bit. It was more for them, but it was for all of us at the end of the day. So this guy, I thought he was going to fly across the table because Jeff Monken came in and basically didn't say anything positive about his football team.
We're too small. We're not fast.
It was like the Rudy speech, man. It was like, you're undersized. We're not tough enough. We're not physical enough. We're not strong enough. And Warren was just so fired up because, we were thinking the guy's the coach of Army. He's supposed to be like, we're going to beat everybody, right? So you pick it up from there, bud.
Oh my God. So he starts saying all this, and I'm looking at Ben across the table and Jay, and we're all kind of just like with our eyes wide open. And he's going, we're not this, we're not that. I was just, dude, you're like, you got to change that tune, right? But
right.
oh my goodness, that was crazy. We all walked out of the meeting and go, oh, here we go again. It's gonna be another 2-12 season or whatever. But listen, to his credit, again, with the support of the higher ups at the academy, he really turned it around. The guys didn't have to go on maneuvers. They could come in, they could beef them up, get them in the weight room, feed them lots of protein. And all of a sudden they had 300-pound linemen. And boy, did he do a fantastic job of turning that around. I'll never forget, that year they defended the post, which was always a big deal.
Yeah.
And do you remember our first telecast with Monken? I don't know if you've talked to our producer Steve McKee. So we had balls. That as we had that crazy thing set up, and Monken was very professional in the meetings, and he was very kind of soft spoken, and never would utter a bad word and everything else. So we set it up. McKee sets it up to have a mic on him and the camera in the locker room before the game for the pregame speech. And we're going to go live with this thing, do a time shift and turn it around and go live on the air. And he gets up and drops, about 100 F-bombs in 3 minutes. None of that could air. And
that's what you were looking for.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And then finally, right, for him to be fired up, and he was never that way in the meetings. And boy, you got in that locker room. It's like, who is this guy? He's going crazy. He jumps up on the table and F this, F that. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And McKee jumps up, and there was one clip we could use. He said, you got to go out there and, beat him. You got to have balls. And McKee, our producer, said, no balls. Right. Can't use that clip. We ended up using like a 7 or 8 second clip, as I recall. But listen, that was a program. It was very interesting to be a part of that because he just turned that program around. They defended the post. They won all their home games. They
started beating Navy.
They beat Navy that year. They won a bowl game.
Yep.
So it was great. And listen, again, we would meet, as you know, Benny, we'd meet with those young men every week. They'd bring us a couple of players to meet with. And to a man, these guys were just they were polite. They were professional. They were intelligent. It was a little shy. Remember the first time we met with the quarterback?
Oh, yeah.
He maybe said 2 words.
Bradshaw?
Ahmad, maybe said 2 words, but by the time he was a senior, boy, we couldn't shut him up. Yeah. Exactly. But that was great. Just, I love that. And fortunately, my wife was your stage manager, took care of you guys, and it was great to work with her up there. But just a great experience to work at Army and at West Point, and the rich history there. You walk through those halls and walk around that campus. It's a really unique place. So I give those guys a lot of credit, and then they have to go off and serve our country and put themselves in harm's way. So terrific group of people, and it was as you said, what was it? It was an honor and a privilege.
Pleasure and an honor.
Pleasure and an honor to be a part of that program, and great working with you, and again taking all your color analysts through the Holden Academy. Every year you're training a new guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember Feely's first game, and our producer Steve McKee, who you referenced, and he's just like, man, is this guy ever going to shut up?
This is going to be a long
I
season.
said, just let him go, man. We
That's
worked with
right.
him, but no, it's I take a lot of pride in it too, Warren, and I think of it this way, I believe there's only 3 programs that have national television contracts: Notre Dame,
Mhm.
Army, and Navy, and I still am employed by CBS and hope to be for a long time. I take a lot of pride in that, so it was awesome to be there with you because I know how much and I think people realize now with that story about you want to fly over the table and take him on because he wasn't being positive enough. Your
Right.
passion for it too. I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit.
Okay.
Give me, if you can, I don't care if it's 1 to 5 or 5 to 1, top 5 events that you worked in your career of all the years, 40 plus years now, man. And that's probably hard to answer, but I wanted to see what your response would be to that.
Top 5. Well, it's tough, because Benny, every show is a new show, and we treat every show
Right.
like the Super Bowl, right?
Right. Yep.
So let's see. I would say top 5. I'd say the Olympics are certainly within it. Let's say they're number 5, just
All
for
right.
grants.
Okay. It's
I'd
gonna be a
say
good
number
list.
4. Yeah, it's a pretty good list. I would say number 4 would be. I was fortunate to do. I used to do world feeds for the NBA. So we
Okay.
did the finals and the All-Star game. So I did Michael Jordan's last game,
Nice.
which was amazing. It's very interesting to see this documentary now and some of the stuff that's come out, which kind of everybody knew about, but to have it really put on the front page is very interesting.
Okay.
I would say third, not a per event, but Super Bowls that I did. I did world feeds for the Super Bowls, and I'll tell you a quick funny story. The last one I did, I'll remain nameless, but the commissioner of the NFL leaned over. My AD is counting me down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. And the commissioner leans over into my ear and says, Warren, there are about 3 billion people watching everything you do. Don't F this up. 2, 1. Yeah, so
That's
that was
awesome.
interesting. Let's see. Where would that get me to that's 5, 4, and 3.
That's 3. Yeah.
I'd say 2. I referenced it earlier, the 1980 U.S. Open with Jack Nicklaus
Yes.
when he came back and won. Just fantastic. I was fortunate enough to be on the 18th green when he won that, and that was just a tremendous experience. I'll say 1A are just the multitude of events I've done both in the entertainment world and the sports world. I've been fortunate to be the line producer on the Image Awards. We've had some wonderful experiences there and have done some other programs. And I'll say the number 1 show that I have ever done, Ben,
Okay.
is yet to come. It's yet to come. And I'm going to be working for many more years, and I'm going to hold that one out there. And one day when I retire, I'll tell you what that number 1 is. But listen, you go into every live sporting event, not knowing what's going to happen. You've got a plan. You got to be flexible, adaptable. As my former boss, Herb Kaplan, used to say, it's all there in front of you. So I would say the number 1 event that I've ever done is still to come.
I like that. I might use that next time somebody asks me that. That's good.
I just made that one up, by the way, but whatever, it works.
Well,
Well, listen, and that's how it is in our business. That's what makes it so interesting. We go into these bull riding events, very dangerous. We call it the most dangerous sport in the world. It probably is.
It is dangerous.
You never know. I mean, we've got terrific athletes there. Our world champion, Just Lockwood, young guy, 2-time world champion. He got really injured beginning of the season. He's out for a good long while. We've got this other guy, Jose Vitor Leme, fantastic athlete, Brazilian guy, could be a world-class soccer player, martial artist. But, you go into every event, whether it's arm wrestling, bull riding, football, basketball, baseball, you never know what's going to happen. And that's what makes it so fascinating and makes it so exciting to go to work every day. So I'm sure that my best, most memorable event is still to come.
All right. That's an awesome list. Who was playing in this Super Bowl? Can you tell me that?
Oh, God, I don't even remember that. I guess that, obviously the New York Giants, Super Bowl champion New York Giants. It was a Giants game against the Patriots. It was just
Oh, in '07
fantastic, you know.
when
Yeah.
they were
So it's
when
just
they were undefeated.
yeah, just great. And as a New
That's
York Giants fan, you can imagine how it felt for me. So just again a great experience to do it. Olympics, Super Bowls, U.S. Open, those big events are
yeah,
fantastic to be a part of. Going to be very interesting in the climate we're in. Obviously the Olympics were canceled this summer.
yep.
Football season, we're unclear as to how it's going to develop, but just great to be involved with these organizations. Feel very fortunate to have been able to do these events and to be able to do events now and in the future.
What? Just give me a feel of what it's like out in California now with everything with the virus, and what are things like in the current state right now out there on the West Coast?
Yeah. Interesting. So I was at LAX a few weeks ago, flew in from the West Coast to here.
Okay.
Quiet airport, all the stores were closed up. Very, very kind of quiet, not a lot of people on the plane. My wife and I flew back. I just say it's quiet. We're in a little bit of a bubble here in Marina del Rey, kind of isolated from, it's not really big city where we are here, but things are starting to reopen. They've opened our community pools here now, but you have to make a reservation. And you can go about an hour a week. Gyms, I'm understanding, are starting to open up. When we were out here early on, the beaches were open, but then they closed them, which, if they close the beaches in California, it's really bad.
Yeah.
It's kind of eerie. I mean, I'm sure it's the same way everywhere. Just, you drive around, you see some stores boarded up. There's some gyms and there's a martial arts place I used to go to nearby. And you just wonder how these people are going to survive. It's quiet. My wife and my daughter and I went out to a restaurant last night, outdoor seating. And the waiters are in masks. We wore masks going in. They ask you to use some hand sanitizer before you sit down. Waiters wear gloves and masks, and everybody just kind of tries to keep their distance. They spread the tables out. But, I just think it's, look, we have the benefit of the beautiful weather, having a little bit of June gloom here now. It's kind of cloudy and hazy in the morning, but it clears up in the afternoon. So I would just say it's a little eerie. People are out more. The traffic's coming up a little bit. It took me about 4 hours to drive from here to Las Vegas on Thursday. It took me about almost 6 hours to drive home yesterday. So there's more traffic. So I think things are kind of picking up. But listen, as you alluded to earlier today, the cases are picking up. I think we're just all in a tenuous situation. I've been involved with some industry papers and things about how to get production back to work. All kinds of guidelines from, SAG-AFTRA and DGA and the technical unions about how to do it. But I think everybody's just kind of in a wait and see. And listen, with all the protests that have gone on, I know yesterday here at Compton, there were some challenges between protesters and law enforcement. So I think everybody's, it just feels a little bit eerie. Again, we have the benefit of the nice weather, but we sit and look at the channel here. Lots of boats going by all day, and people are out boating and doing some water activities. We get out on our kayak, and we're going to do some sailing next week. My son is here, but little by little, I think everybody's trying to figure out what the new normal is. And as far as production, again, as I mentioned with the PBR, and as I will be dealing with World Arm Wrestling League.
Right.
It's kind of one step at a time, one day at a time. You try something that may not work, protocols change. So I think everybody's, I will say, I've seen there's a kind of positive energy out here in California. Look, this state goes through all kinds of crazy stuff between the, fires and earthquakes and some of the things that have gone on in the past. So I think people have a good attitude, but people are getting a little bit frustrated as well. I think that's one of the things that, as my friend said, we learned what happens to Americans when you lock them up for 3 months and then piss them off.
Right.
Exactly. It's a challenge for everybody, but listen, somehow this country, this nation, this world, we'll get through it. There will be some new normals, just as have happened in the past when we've gone through things, and 9/11 is an example. But just try to stay positive and take it one day at a time.
All right. Last thing before I let you go. There's a young Warren Pick out there that wants a lifelong career in broadcasting as a director. What are some things you would advise someone that wants to do what you've done so well for so many years, my friend?
So my advice would be, first of all, learn your craft and learn everything about your craft. I was fortunate in college. I learned how to run a camera, learned how to run an audio board, learned how to edit. My first job, I remember, I was telling you, producer director, but I would edit all the commercial reels
Yeah.
in between. I've always felt that if you're going to ask a camera operator to get you a certain shot, you have to know what those capabilities are, not only of the operator, but the equipment. So learn the equipment as best you can, learn the craft of all the individual positions as best you can. It doesn't mean you have to become an expert in it, but understand it. And then never, I'd say the overall thing is, I've been thrown into a lot of sports, Ben, arm wrestling as an example, that I knew nothing about.
Me too.
But right, yeah, but we were fortunate. We had this crazy guy Neil, who knew everything there was to know about arm wrestling. And you have to become a student not only of the work but of the sport. I've always relied very heavily on my analysts who come from the sport,
Yep.
and my play-by-play guys because of their expertise. So I think, people, you can't be afraid to ask questions, and you kind of have to be you have to learn. You have to learn about the sport you're covering. You have to learn about the equipment you're using, the production techniques, and everything else. So I think it's really a matter of being a student, doing your homework. As you said, you're a guy that comes prepared to every game. You've got to be prepared, which means you need to know, your staff, know your colleagues, know what their capabilities are, know the equipment you're working with, and understand the sport and ask questions. Rely on people. Don't go in and say, "Oh, I get this, I understand it." Go in ignorant, and say,
Right.
"Tell me everything you know about this sport." And the one thing that I will say, I've been very fortunate, and I think in our business in particular, when you ask people questions, they want to help
Yes.
because they have a love for the sport. They have a
Mhm.
passion for the sport. So if you ask them and, "Hey, Neil, what's a top roll?" He's going to tell you what it is, and you're going to learn from that. So then
Right.
when the top roll happens, you know how to cover it. So I'd say those are the main things. Do your homework, study the genre you're working in, study the sport you're working in, study the whatever it is whatever genre of communications you're working in, study that, and never be afraid to ask questions. The old saying, "There's no such thing as a stupid question." That's really true. And if it
Yeah.
is a stupid question, you may have to ask it anyway and eat a little crow. But I think that's the advice I'd give people. Just become a student and never stop learning. People say, "Oh, I'm done with school, I stopped learning." I said this to my son recently. He graduated from Temple University with an engineering degree this past spring. And I said to him, we did a Zoom call for their graduation, he and his girlfriend. And I said, "What you guys have done now is you've learned how to study. So now the learning really begins in life." And I think that
Right.
also applies to a career. Never be afraid to ask every question you possibly can, listen, and then ask follow-up questions, and just become a full student of it. And then apply your own, expertise that you've gained, and be flexible. Be flexible to new situations and new people and new experiences. And if you do, you're going to be fortunate, Benny, like you and I have been, to have a wonderful career, meet great people, travel the world, have wonderful experiences, and fortunately make a couple of bucks doing it as well. Support your
That's
families.
yeah. That doesn't hurt, man. Great advice, and good friend of mine, co-worker of many different events we've covered. And Warren, thanks for joining me and doing this, and appreciate it. You and your wife and your family continue to enjoy yourselves out there in Cali as much as you can, and I look forward to seeing you in about 6 weeks in Chicago for arm wrestling.
You as well, Benny. You take care. All the best of luck to you and your family. And hey, keep broadcasting, man. You're the best.
Thanks, Warren. That's been our 50th edition of No Holding Back. Ben Holden for Warren Pick. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time with an all-new edition.